Or call the Mud 7 meeting to order. Um, And we have, I guess, go ahead and take attendance. So Marta,
Here.
Emily,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Jack,
Present.
Brad is here. So we have more than a quorum. So we will start. We've got a modified agenda this week. You should all have a copy of that in front of you. We have just 5 items plus adjournment. We'll go through that. So let's go ahead and do our opening invocation, our pledges, and work through the agenda. Join me for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love and care for us. We thank you for the special time of the year where we celebrate Christmas and the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you for the time to gather and be about our community business. We pray that you would guide us and direct us, that we would cooperate, that we would know your will for us as we be servants of those that elected us. We thank you for the privilege we have. We pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. Come in, pledge to the U.S. flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you all. Any comments from the public? Okay. So our main topic today is the consider and act on the draft water reclamation facility number 1 decision matrix. We have updated criteria that was emailed out, and then we have a workshop for paired comparisons of the criteria. So they've gone from 7 criteria to 6. I want to make sure everybody understands the work process. So these criteria with the sub-criteria are basically how Corolla will judge the 4 alternatives. So each alternative will be analyzed and then judged and given a score. You can see the scoring scale, 1 being worst, 5 being best. So each of the sub-criteria or each of the alternatives will be scored on sub-criteria. They'll be weighted. That'll roll up to a score for the 6 criteria. And then using the outcome of our weighting exercise, the 6 criteria will be weighted, and that'll be used to generate a priority order for the 4 alternatives. Okay, so our job today is to align on the weighting for the 6 criteria. I thought before we do that, I want to go through the criteria and make sure we're clear on that. If anybody had any issues before we start aligning and judging between criteria. So life cycle cost, 2 sub-criteria there. Any questions or comment on those? And they're weighted 50-50.
Okay, they kind of turned it around, huh?
Yeah, so take what you had last month and set it to the side, and what was emailed out Thursday morning is the new one. And like I said, they've gone from 7 to 6, and they've tried to clarify in many cases. They've reduced the number of sub-criteria, and they've eliminated some combination of items as a sub-criteria that may have been in conflict with one another. And
that was resultant from the input that I received from directors. So there was a handful of directors that put in input, comments and questions to me. I forwarded that to Corolla, and this is kind of the resultant of all those questions that have come through the various board members.
Okay. Yeah, I had some questions.
I guess the only comment I had on the sub-criteria for rate impact, it was highest incremental unit cost. It wasn't clear to me how they were going to calculate that unit cost relative time. Is it, how do they, and that's really included in the NPV calculation above. But highest incremental cost is that. So if you got an option that has cost jumps up early, but then is fairly flat versus one that keeps the cost low and then has a big increase at the very end, how do you compare that to get what they call the highest incremental unit cost? So
that'll be consistent with the debt schedule for the bonds. So typically SJ bonds, which is what this would likely be, would be on a 30-year. You could do, a lot of mud bonds are 25. SJ gets such a good rate that they, just to reduce, they go to 30. You could go to 50. I wouldn't recommend that. That's not normal, but normally it's 30. That's usually the norm.
yeah, just when they, I mean, there should be an equation related to how they're going to calculate highest incremental unit cost. Okay. No other questions on life cycle costs? So we understand that one.
Well, I guess the accounting lifetime of a plant is 50 years. So shouldn't that be 50 years? It's just considering the bond, how long it's.
Well,
That'd
item
be
1A is the 50-year net present value. Okay, so that's rolled in there.
The value, right? But not the cost, correct?
Well, that's how they're calculating. They'll take the cost to run into net present value.
net present value is a total cost.
Okay, and whether we do a refurbish of the current plant or we get a new one, there will be an SJRA bond. Is that correct?
No, that's a separate issue.
Okay.
Okay. I think based upon I think the cost will be significant regardless of what we do, that we'll probably have a bond, but how many and that's all to be decided.
Yeah, if there's an option that's low enough and maybe a district had the ability to pay some out of cash, but even the cheapest one is probably not going to fit that mold.
Yeah.
But we don't know that, but
Right.
I agree with Brad. It's probably not likely.
Okay. Criteria number 2 is operations and maintenance considerations. 4 sub items there. Anybody had any questions or comments on those? And those 2 of them are weighted 30% and 2 at 20%, all focused on the category of maintaining and operating the plant.
So we eliminated staffing requirements.
No.
Where
So operation complexity has staffing in there as part of that sub-criteria. If you look at the scoring, so the best score has using existing staff. And then as you go from 5 towards 1, you actually increase staff. Now, my question here is staffing should be reflected in the cost. So are you double dipping the impact of staffing because you got it on cost and you got it here also? So I don't, but that's not unique to staffing. I think a number of these things are ultimately result in cost. Yeah. Okay.
You're correct there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, is it important to you that in the end, the final product does or isn't more so complex that it requires more staff, right? Is it whether that's a technology or whether that's built into the design, is it so complex that it needs more people to run it? I think that's, kind of the overall summary.
out of curiosity, how many do we require now?
I don't know offhand. There's a handful of folks that operate the plants on a daily basis.
What's SCADA stand for? Or outages?
SCADA, So SCADA is the technology that allows them to control the facilities remotely in a command center. So you don't have men running all over different plants to check pressures to get it all dialed in. They're able to look on a computer screen and basically see if, there's a pump out, see if they're losing pressure or whatever the case may be.
Where's that command center located?
There's several. The GRP has its own. There's one over at wastewater treatment plant number 3. I don't know where all the other ones are, but
Okay.
Offhand, but
It specifically stands for supervisory control and data acquisition. So historically they had independent machine control or control with a single instrument. The SCADA system combines them all in, so you can do cross element control, and you have a data acquisition system. So you have a system that collects the data, so you know what your flow rates are, you know what your temperatures are. And if you have online analyzers, it collects that information also.
So we currently don't have any of that, or we do have?
No, we do.
Yeah.
That's the SCADA.
that system that's complex as this usually has it. Smaller systems, 1 plant, 2 plants, you wouldn't see it. Because an operator could do it by hand and go to the plant and read the telemetry and all that and press buttons and whatnot. But when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 water plants or multiple treatment plants, you would get it.
Any other questions on criteria number 2?
What is our peak flow capacity at this point in time?
Peak flow. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
20, 30 million
No. It's less than that.
peak flow.
Because you're measuring it,
Well, our
you're giving us a number here.
Yeah, permitted flow, average daily flow is 7.8. But that's not peak flow. Peak flow is usually about 4 Q.
Mostly 4 times
Yeah, it's
that.
usually 4 Q. Q is the
Typically.
average daily flow.
If things are good in the collection system.
Yeah, and I think like in a heavy storm event, I think Chris had mentioned in that one in January that the peak flow in that plant got to 32 MGD. Even though average daily flow is 3.3. Or 3.
Yeah, our permitted peak flow is, for a 2-hour peak flow is 18
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. For 2 hours.
for 2 hours. Yeah, okay. And that's million gallons per day.
Yep.
And this is straight million gallons for retention. And this is, I mean, again, this is a cost optimization where you make the plant bigger and you pay more for the base plant, but you don't need a retention, or you minimize or you reduce the size of the base plant and you make a larger retention basin. Okay. Okay, item 3 is the use of existing infrastructure. Okay. So 2 criteria, sub-criteria there, weighted 40 and 60%. Any comments on that area?
Well, that's a new one.
I guess I had for 3A, it said that does alternative make the most efficient use of existing infrastructures and equipment? I'm not sure how they're calculating the efficient, what they mean, how they're going to calculate that. I guess the scoring tells you, use as is, use minor mechanical improvements. It wasn't clear to me where normal maintenance and replacement of end-of-life items come in here, but that's, I don't know. On 3B, there was a adaptability of potential future regulations. So that's a pretty big assumption to define what those potential future regulations are. And do they have a basis for what those future regulations might be?
Yeah, we've seen in this region an increase from TCQ on dealing with nitrogen and phosphorus. So there's a high likelihood that a future effluent permit will require removal. And so that was one of the things that was taken into consideration for freeze was the ability to address phosphorus and nitrogen potentially in the future. It's not in your permit right now, but it's popping up in other permits in the region.
Yeah.
So I
And
think
it's
that's part of it. And in my experience, in wastewater treatment plants in 25 years, the requirements never get less.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean?
They've never gone down.
They've never.
You just have to be careful that you don't bias your answer to pre-invest in something that's uncertain.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But I do think we need to be cautious with it though, because they have hearings and then they do it and then it's your job and you have X years to accomplish it.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we're not.
Currently is our, are we at reg or are we below reg?
Right.
We're just at reg.
I mean, it's a yes or no, either are, you're not.
The requirement is that the plant has to meet a certain level on multiple criteria. If you
Correct.
exceed those in concentration, then you exceed permit, period.
But we're nowhere below, way below where we should be.
Yeah, no, that's not a normal goal to be way below. I mean, obviously, you don't want to live like right at the edge, of course. You want to have some buffer.
Yeah,
But it's also, average daily flow is one of those parameters. That's something that's, we can easily stay under that, but that's also dictated by usage. But when we're really talking about BOD, TSS, and ammonia, those are the three major contaminants that are evaluated in your permit. You don't want to be bumping up against that every day. Chlorine residuals on plants over 1 MGD has to dechlor. So they'll look at that as well. But I mean, you're trying to just meet permit basically.
Well,
I mean,
If
I mean,
they,
E. coli, your permit's 200 and we report 1. Okay, which is where you want to be.
right.
Okay, you don't want to be up some measurable amount of E. coli.
I think the nitrogen and phosphorus would be the most likely to be, that's,
Correct.
if they raise it, it won't be the first time.
The other thing that I've seen happen a fair amount over my career is TSS, BOD, TSS, and ammonia, those three constituents, what they'll do from time to time is they will model the receiving stream. And if they identify that it is, I forgot the terminology,
Unhealthy.
but they use a term for that. Correct. If they believe that it is compromised from the standpoint of, oxygen and aquatic life, then they will lower your limits. Because ultimately a less clean water coming out is going to require more oxygen then kills the minnows and all the other things in the stream. And they don't want that to happen. So they could lower that as well. And that would be, like I said, dependent on how they model the stream, the receiving stream of the effluent.
And again, I just said there's always going to be a time factor that says you have to do it within a certain period.
Yeah, Craig's permit periods are 5 years. They're all now on a 5-year market, a 5-year deal now across the state.
I just think when Corel puts together the final package, they need to be clear about what future limits they're.
The domain.
Yeah. Okay, number 4 is safety. So two sub-criteria weighted 50-50. Any comments on those two? Okay. Number 5 is constructability and sequencing. 3 criteria, 44 and 20. Comments? I thought the only thing I picked up was on 5C. The original sub-criteria, depending on how you read it, would interpret it, it looked like it could have been more oriented towards the need for land to build the facility and actually place a facility. Here, they're very explicit in calling out that this is a construction staging activity. So this is a temporary demand for land that is, again, mitigated by increasing cost.
Is that the same one you were questioning about is there room?
Yes, yes,
Yes or no?
Yes,
And
yes.
that clarifies that for you or?
right, yeah. It changes it.
Changes it. Yeah.
Changes it, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Makes it a temporary demand.
right, right. So again, this is one that if you don't get a 5 score on this, you're gonna have to go find some offsite construction lay down and pay for that.
Right.
Okay.
You could do that on a temporary basis if you need probably if you.
Construction
if you couldn't fit
easement.
it on the plan. Yeah, to build a 7 MGD plan or of anything of that size, you're gonna need a significant yard material, staging area.
Well, you might also find that you want to use something that's in floodplain temporarily.
Yeah, possible, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they won't argue. They just need a space.
Yeah. Okay, and finally, community impact, number 6. So again, weighted split 40, 40, and 20
Glad they dropped that to 40
on which one?
on the aesthetics
Yeah.
from
okay.
75. But I did feel like putting them all together, some of those might be more impactful or of concern than others.
Yeah, I mean, my response was that, eminent domain relative to power usage, those are kind of like apples and oranges, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but they're grouped under community impact. Not a hill to die on. The one thing that did surprise me, again, the odor control, noise, and visual, they now are limiting this to resulting from construction. So I'm not sure if they're like odor control and base plant operation, are they all saying all options will meet the same odor control and their only concerning is the impact during construction? Because that was one thing that some folks thought the different alternatives were differentiating. But this specifically says from construction.
Yeah. I have the same, when any of the options are built, I would say the most common complaint that you're going to get is odor from Wizard. It cycles from, month to month, temperature to temperature. And so odor could potentially, I guess what I'm trying to say is odor could potentially be an issue beyond construction. Now, whether it will be worse during or not, that I mean, if you're trying to replace in place or repair in place, you might have some likelihood of some more issues.
Right.
This is going to be more difficult to operate the plant during that. But again, that would be during construction. It'd be temporary. Once it's built, you would hope that, you can handle the odor fairly well, like a normal plant, but
So why did you take operation of the facility out? Because in the initial, it did say operation of the facility, and now it's just construction.
I don't know why the feedback,
it's not me.
yeah.
No, I mean in general, I don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
Y'all,
everybody.
everybody.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Because it made more sense when it was operation. Yes, we don't want to increase the amount of noise or visual.
Well, I guess one of the driving forces for all of this was to eliminate operating odors, period, whichever way you do it, right?
well, that was, as we talk about alternatives, some people think one alternative gives you a higher probability of having no odor than
Right,
other
well, that's what I'm
alternatives.
saying, that's
So-
where that was, but this is talking specifically now about construction
yeah,
period.
Yeah, and I will say the other two items, I mean, odor certainly is a possibility. I think after construction, noise and aesthetics go away. I mean, that wouldn't be a thing. Noise could be a thing. All three could very well be a thing during construction.
We just disappointed.
Yeah.
They're still there. I said, no matter how the money is spent.
Okay, so, the next thing is, and I appreciate your input and the time to go over that, make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah, you did a good job.
So we've got the, paired criteria and worksheet. I was going to propose an interim step. If you guys, I don't know how you've worked on this and, there's basically 6 categories. If you prioritize them, if we have alignment on the prioritization, filling out the worksheet falls in place. I was just going to try to get a feel for how close we're aligned by having people say 1 through 6, what are their priorities? As opposed to jumping into the worksheet. Because you jump into the worksheet, sometimes it's hard to understand what you're really trying to do here. And, we want to reach the consensus, so we may have some compromises. I thought understanding where we are to start with might give us more clarity. You guys interested in doing that, or would you rather jump into the worksheet?
I'd prefer to do what you just suggested.
Okay.
If we're in alignment, why would we want to debate this in great detail?
Okay,
Just to see how we need to close in.
yeah, okay. So Jack, if you don't mind, and what you got?
I said 3, I'm just going right down the list. I'll give you my,
So,
Most important to least important?
yeah,
Is that what?
yeah, so these are the criteria, 6 criteria. Okay, you tell me what's your most important.
okay, criteria number 1 is life cycle cost, right?
It's what you value.
Okay, I get it. Okay. 4 is safety.
Okay,
Wait,
no,
your first
tell
one's
me
3.
your top criteria.
This first
Safety.
one.
Okay,
Oh, let's see.
1, Mr. Second.
Second one is community impact.
6.
Yeah, I
Number
think safety should be
6.
over there at the top.
Yeah, so that's why I was going to give you the numbers. 4 is safety.
The top one should have been a 4, right? If you're going,
No, these are the criteria.
That's life cycle cost. That I rated number 3.
So these are the criteria. I want you to tell me what your rating are.
So
3.
yes, going back
Right.
through that.
Life cycle cost, I rated 3rd.
3, okay.
All right.
What was your most important thing out of the 6?
Safety.
Number 4. Okay. What was your second most important thing?
Community impact.
Okay. Third,
Operations and maintenance considerations.
2. Oh, that would be a 4.
The number 4. I've already got 3. The number 3 was the top one, the life
okay,
cycle
but
cost.
you're now saying this is 4. I thought you said that was 3. This is 4,
That's 4.
okay?
5, constructability and sequencing. 5 and 5. And use of existing infrastructure was 6.
Okay. Anybody else want to go next?
Want to put yours?
I can't, I didn't want to bias people's mind, but I'm happy to put mine up. Really, the way to do this is blind. But anyway, Yeah, yours, Paul?
I think so. If we start, you just want me to go down the
Yeah.
list. I think, most important is number 2. Second is number 1. And then 3 is 3. And then 5, 6, and 4. Just straight down 5, 6, and 4.
Okay. Marta and Emily?
All right, so, okay, we're just going all the way from top to bottom.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna go all the way from, what life cycle cost is.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, it's just 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. Marta?
3, 6,
Oh, okay.
2, 5, 1, 4.
Right.
So it's random.
That's not what you were expecting either.
You wanted to do this.
Number one, there seems to be a lot of agreement. For that.
Now what?
Yeah, most of them at the
Mid.
top.
6 is a little bit more than the.
4,
Maybe we ought to order that pizza. Okay, this is what I wanted to know, was see, I mean, you can look, so we got 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So 4 or 5 out of the 6 items have received 1 vote. So if somebody,
And all different.
We've got 5 people voting.
yeah, 5 people, yeah, interesting. Okay,
Different places.
this means the next phase will be kind of interesting. Okay. We'll see how the,
But let's just kind of look broad spectrum here. I mean, we've got a lot of 3s and we've got a lot of 4s, and then.
You guys are
5,
alignment on
6.
4. I'm the one on alignment on number 4, safety.
So generally we're 1s, 2s, 3, like this is the first half, like if we were just to.
Yeah. I think we can jump from here and go back into their
So if we
worksheet.
want to take all the numbers and divide and get our mean,
Um,
and then we can kind of see where we
1
are.
and 6 are.
no,
So
And just remove all the ones.
So just as a suggestion,
Yeah.
and just because I've seen it done now several times with some of the other months, they didn't go to this level, but I like it. What they did was they started down the worksheet and they basically went 1 versus 2. Okay. And everybody kind of went, not officially around the room, but some of them, it was really quick. It's like 1, 1, 1. Okay, move on. That's a 1. There's clearly more than at least 3 people that wanted a 1. So 1 got chosen and you just kept now. There's some easier ones and then there's some harder ones. Because even though you valued certain things here, I see that when it comes to comparing it with a different thing, it'd be easy to go to this now and say, well, based on that, I thought this was more important than that. So it aligns you perfectly.
yeah, yeah.
But I think because there's so much difference, it's going to be very interesting to go through the
Right, because everybody will have different unique trade-offs.
perhaps.
Or if we had more alignment, the
And-
trade-offs are pretty easy.
And so what happened was if it was like, well, us 2 kind of had this one as the option and us 2 kind of had this one, then the others would say, okay, tell me a little bit about why you think that.
Yeah.
And there'd be a little bit of dialogue and some would say, you know what? You changed my mind. I get what you're saying. That's better than the reasoning I had,
Sure,
whatever.
yeah.
And people morph into something and they agree. It's been very organic, to be honest with you. It works really well.
And that's why I wanted, before we did any of this, I wanted to go to the criteria to make sure we were
Yeah.
understanding things the same way. So let's go ahead and pull out.
Well, can I ask a question before we go forward?
Sure.
What, after we do this, I mean, each MUD's doing this.
Yeah, so there will be 3 that finish in January. I will receive and keep all of them and not give them to the consultant until the end of January. They said that that's when they need them by. So there's 7 buds having meetings in December. 3 of them did not. So we'll finish theirs up in January, but I'll hold all of them until the end of January, until I have all of them, and I'll give them to the consultant.
But I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out how 10 utility districts,
No, so what they showed in their presentation was they're gonna put every single one in. And that goes into the algorithm and the software. So each MUD will have equal weighting, if you will, on what they're.
but then they have to go through this process with 50 people, opinions.
No, they're only
And
10.
No.
Only 10.
And that's true. I think-
We're gonna vote for whoever wins tonight, then that's gonna
Well,
be,
This is gonna be R.
yeah, I mean, our deal.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So they 10 answers.
And I think SDRF is allowed to have one too.
Well, that's interesting because Chris talked about they may have as many as 10.
Okay.
So they were talking about potentially having one from operations, one from technical, one from maintenance, one from, I don't know how you got 10, but
I don't.
I would have thought they would have come up with one, but if they have multiple, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we go wait, 10 from the mud and the 10 from the 5 from the River Authority, and then it's 1-to-1 waiting. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
But this, I mean, if you look back on this is their score, their example.
Right.
Where you,
How that-
but instead of these 5 people or 7 people, we'd have mud 1, 2, 3, 4, and they combine them all in to get them into a final
Okay,
weight.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify them.
So, because that is important, how many river authorities go have and how they're going to be combined with the ones from the mud.
Was 10 chosen to kind of balance us out where we are?
I don't know.
I don't know where he just picked a number, maybe. I don't know.
There was a comment about being able to see the results once the consultant has them, and she did indicate that she would share that when they come out or whatever.
Okay, let's pick out our worksheets and we'll go through this and we'll see if we can, Eric, when the others did them, did they skip any that they couldn't align on? They reached alignment on every one before they moved to the next one?
There was one district that had at least 3, maybe 4 2-to-2s. And that's when more dialogue came about. And it was like, okay, well, tell me where you're coming from and tell me where you're coming from. And then ultimately there was either a tie break or someone also swung and said, you know what, I like your reasoning.
Okay.
I'll switch mine. And, ultimately we were looking for 3-to-2. And so, but it morphed. Some people changed their mind after hearing the other speak. So.
Okay.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Number 4, to me, seems like you would always have that about consideration. It seems assumed that you would always operate safely.
Well, we're all gonna be in compliance with OSHA, right? No
We have
matter
to
what
be.
those rules are.
You don't have to use gaseous chlorine. You don't have to use certain chemicals. You can use different alternatives that are safer. So there's, handrails and
So
non-slip grading and those are all going to be inherent in any of
Chlorine,
the options.
chlorine gas instead of liquid.
Correct.
Those kind of things.
That's going to be different. Yeah.
That's-
So there are some other safety things that are selectable that wouldn't come as a standard.
You can
Okay,
balance those with cost.
That's right.
Basically, are you willing to pay for quote, a
Extra.
safer
Correct.
alternative?
Give you an
Okay.
example. Gaseous chlorine is extraordinarily dangerous, but it's used every day. It's used at your facilities now. If you were to have a leak and there were people around, they would die, period. They're not getting out of it, right? An alternative is to use bleach. Not as effective, more expensive, but a heck of a lot safer. You dump a whole bleach tank, no one's dying. You get a guy into a gaseous chlorine cloud, he's not going to live. So that's just, you value safety because it might cost more or vice versa,
And there's costs associated to mitigate the risk with chlorine. you know, you've got to have this personal protection stuff. You've got to have alarms, alerts for detection of leaks.
Sure, yeah, and that's that part to be.
Yeah, okay, so I mean,
You know, it doesn't mean that because the chemical is more dangerous, that the safety measures that were required associated with that chemical won't be there. They will absolutely be there, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
nobody's gonna build a plant that is outside the norm.
Correct.
Well, that's why I'm wondering why it's a consideration, other than if you're gonna choose the different gas, a gas versus a bleach. I would always assume that you would be compliant.
Yeah,
It would be.
it's kind of like, are you going to meet your permit requirements? Yes. If you
Yeah,
don't
of
meet your
course.
permit requirements, it's not gonna build. Okay, so let's
So
jump in.
Martha, we look over here, you know, you might have been considering that way. Like, why aren't we considering safety first?
Yes, that's
right?
why I.
And then
put it
we're
in-
all like 5 and 6, like, yay. Yeah,
Well,
because of
because
course
I
we
don't-
have to, right?
You
We didn't
should
have a
be.
talk about it, so.
Yeah, and that one's
Leave them
actually
out.
an interesting outlier with. Well, 5 is an interesting outlier, I guess.
I would
But
say,
4 is outlier also.
I would suggest let's get into it.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think some of these things will come out
All right,
organically.
thank you.
Okay, so 1 versus 2. Do we have do we want to take a vote? How many think 1? How many think 2?
One.
I'm 1.
One between the two of these, which one?
Okay,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's 1 versus 2. So that's three for 1.
Say,
I'll do 2. I mean, that to me,
Oh, wait. I thought you just voted 1.
No, I was asking a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were voting.
put a question mark
Okay,
behind that.
let
Do you value life cycle cost or operation and maintenance?
So you get criteria 1 versus 2. Okay, let's vote. How many want criteria 1? 2. 2 of us want 3? I feel like I'm an auctioneer.
2.
I'm sorry?
Yes, operation.
No, wait. We're counting the votes for number 1.
Oh, okay.
How many people are voting for number 1?
Criteria 1.
Criteria 1.
For their number one, question mark.
Yes,
Oh,
just 2. Okay, how many are voting for criteria 2 to be there?
Your primary.
Okay, 2. Very interesting. Criteria 1 versus criteria 3. How many want criteria 1? Okay. How many want criteria 3? Raise a hand or a voice. No, you haven't voted. So we're at 2-2 right now.
I'll go for 3.
Okay.
So that was more for 3.
3 for
Yeah.
2, yeah.
3 for 3. The third item on here is criteria 1 versus criteria 4. How many for criteria 1?
I'm gonna change my opinion after this discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So that's 1, okay?
That's
Well,
5.
Okay, that's 5 for 1. Criteria 1 versus criteria 5. How many for criteria 1? Okay, how many for criteria? Oh, excuse me. Was that a late vote for 1?
One. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of,
I'm gonna go for 1.
Okay, got 1 there.
1 it is.
1 it is.
Community, cost versus community impact, 1 versus 6.
Ready for 1?
1.
Okay.
I guess I'm.
Community's just
sick.
gonna have to deal with it.
Wait a minute.
It's only during construction. Come
That's
on.
what I mean, is the construction,
I'm only voting
The note is
for 1.
construction.
I'm sorry.
put up a sign saying it'll be over soon.
excuse our mess.
Go on a holiday, right?
We have to do.
Okay, no, we shouldn't strike that from the tape. Okay, operations, so next one, criteria 2 versus criteria 3, operations and maintenance considerations versus use of existing infrastructure. Vote for criteria 2? 1? Vote for criteria 3? Three has it?
Three?
Yep. Next one, criteria 2 versus criteria 4.
Criteria 2.
Criteria 2,
2,
okay. Next one, criteria 2 versus criteria 5. So operations and maintenance versus constructability. Criteria 2 voting? Oh, 5-0 on that one. That's interesting. Criteria 2 versus criteria 6. Criteria 2? 2 has it. Criteria 3 versus criteria 4. Criteria 3 voting? Criteria 4 voting? 3 has it. Criteria 3 versus criteria 5. Criteria 3 voting? 3 has it. Criteria 3 versus criteria 6. Criteria 3 voting?
3,
3 has it, I think. Criteria 4 safety versus criteria 5 constructability and sequencing. Criteria 4? Criteria 5?
I guess I'll do 5, I think,
All right, got it. Okay.
in that case for safety.
Next to last, criteria 4 safety versus criteria 6 community impact. Criteria 4?
4,
Safety got one nod.
And criteria 5 versus criteria 6. Criteria 5 voting? 5.
Oh, you got,
Yeah.
5. Okay, so in summary, let
Let
me,
me repeat, yeah, let me repeat what I have since I'm gonna pass this one in.
okay,
I'll go right down in order. 2, 3, 1, 1, 1, 3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 5, 4, 5. Is that what everybody had? Okay. That was a little unique, a little different than some of the others.
good.
giving our result or our process?
Well, both.
That's why.
Let's try it to be different.
Yeah. No, it was good.
Different process.
so what's number 1?
What did we come up with our priorities? I mean, I guess I could guess.
Let's,
Wait, what
let
we
me do
went
the
with.
math,
I
okay?
want to hear it out loud.
Yeah, let me do the math.
As far as what?
For us, 1 through 6, which one is our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
Okay, so 3 had 5 votes. So that puts 3 at number 1, which is use of existing infrastructure. Number 2 had 4 votes, which is operation and maintenance considerations.
So that's second.
Second. 3 votes went to number 1. So that's life cycle cost.
So it maintained its,
Number 5. Oh, hold on. Yeah,
Yeah, constructability.
constructability
is number 4.
is,
What's number 4?
Yeah.
yes.
Constructability and sequencing,
And then
then safety,
safety is number 5
community impact.
with 0 votes. Oh, I think the fact that they said it during construction is
During construction.
a key qualifier for that.
Yep.
Because my original scoring would have had that much higher.
Right.
Okay.
I would remember that statement.
Yeah, in general, the others are not, that one's not getting a lot of play either. Cost is getting more play elsewhere though.
Yeah, I'm shocked at cost. Absolutely shocked. But that's why we do it.
That's why we do it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. I appreciate your input and patience on this.
Yeah, great
Quite-
job.
Quite informative. So,
Yeah, good job.
okay, so we can go back to our agenda. So, this meeting, as we left November's meeting, the December meeting was only going to be a workshop related to the decision matrix there was an item on here added on Garber's engineering recommendation for the sewage system rehabilitation, wastewater collections rehabilitation. This surprised me. I didn't think it would be on the December meeting. I would like to make a motion that we push this into the January meeting. We now have the printouts. We can read them and then look at them, come back and
Sure.
cover this in January.
No negative connotation.
It was put on because it's a housekeeping item to get the ROA. I can go into the background real quick, and then that way, while you're reading the information, you kind of have some, sense of.
Yeah, I thought your email to me was fine. It was
Yeah.
great. It was helpful.
I can forward that to everybody.
Yeah, that'd be-
Shelley, would that help?
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Yeah. You can verbalize it and they may have some questions.
Yeah, sure. So a few years ago, the sanitary sewer system, if we're WWA, the smaller diameter lines were evaluated by Garber, smoke testing, televising, visual test to see what the condition of the manholes and the sewer pipes are. And coming out of that analysis, there was definitely some areas that needed to be addressed to fix some pipe, to reshore some manholes that, were deteriorated. And it was agreed upon, I guess, a few years ago that just due to the cost, to break it up so that we wouldn't have to do bonds or raise rates or anything, that we would break it up into 3 phases. So if you recall earlier this year, phase 1 or year 1 of the project, the construction was complete. The way that the sequencing has been going is it was design, approval, bid, construction. While phase 1 is under construction, phase 2 is being designed. And as phase 1's construction was being completed, phase 1 was acquiring the approvals. And then that phase 2 bid. And now once we go into construction phase 2, phase 3 will be under design. Where we are in the process is phase 2 just bid. And so, or year 2 is what it was called. And so we received 2 bids, and which you have in front of you. And there's multiple MUDs involved because there was some economy of scale of putting it all together because, the system doesn't know the difference between MUD lines. So, it's economy of scale to do that. You can see on there what MUD 7's share of it is. The overall bid, winning bid was 1.447 million roughly, and you have a couple $100,000 share of that roughly. And you kind of see what that includes. So by law, by the TCQ rule, we must bring it back to the board. So an engineer, professional engineer must review the bids, provide a recommendation to the client of what they recommend. Do I recommend the engineer to select contractor A, B, C, D, however many? We had 2 in this one. In this case, the contractor that did construction in number 1 happened to be the low bidder in phase 2. And so knowing that we had good experience with them in phase 1, I've never seen a cost estimate and bid come this close to
Yeah,
itself.
that was pretty interesting.
I've never seen it. I mean, not on 1.5 million. It was insane. So it was within what, $1,000?
Yeah,
And that was ridiculous.
$1,000.
So we feel like we got good bids. We have a good contractor. We have a track record with them. And so Garver made the recommendation to award the contract to Texas
Is
Pride.
this the same as Waterline Garver, Mike Garver that
Yes.
built all those lines? I mean, I knew he'd done a lot of water lines and stuff.
I have to, I'm not familiar with that outfit as much.
So we're just voting to approve expenditure.
And the project, your
This wasn't-
funds are already budgeted. So
I
this
haven't-
project was budgeted in your
Completely not.
budget.
That's why I want to defer it to.
And they're gonna fix, what in our mud are they fixing? I guess there's a.
Guys,
specific-
Question about, I'm familiar with it somewhat, but I wanted to clarify that I understand like the epoxy is more of a preventative inside the lining of the manhole. And then when you get to the grout stage, there's actually a breach that needs to be filled in to keep from infiltration.
Correct.
So that's a lot of what we're doing.
Yeah, there's 2 kinds of manholes. There's going to be basically a concrete pipe that they stand on end and stack.
Right.
And that's going to be a concrete manhole. and then you're gonna have brick manholes.
That's,
And that was very common here. But what happens is the mortar, and just think of your house, the bricks on your house. The mortar in between the bricks gets completely eaten by the H2S gas that is in sewage.
acid.
So it eats concrete and it eats mortar. And what happens is all these bricks that had mortar in between them, the mortar goes away and the bricks just consolidate. And then it leaks like a sieve. So if you, like, for instance, have a heavy rainstorm event, water will just be coming in through the cracks in the brick. So what you do is you go on the inside.
And stuff like
Yeah,
that.
the structure of the manhole might still be intact. So what you want to do is you want to go in and put a new coating
Coat
on
on
the
it.
inside, and you'll either use cementitious grout, or you will use epoxy coating, or you will use a combination of both.
Is this in red, the epoxy, because it wasn't part of the engineer's bid, it was part of contractor's bid? I mean, it's the only thing, there's a couple of things, but mostly in red.
Was it? Med 7 doesn't have the epoxy.
And then it's approximately what the difference is in when the engineer's bid and the contractors.
I'd have to double check your question. I don't know offhand.
And so very few things are listed in red. So I'm thinking maybe the contractor did it and the engineer didn't identify it.
And why is this one on the?
If you look at the engineer's estimate for our mud, it's actually, what, $23,000 less than the contractor's bid. And that's almost the amount of the epoxy.
I see what you're saying. I'll ask that question.
So can we take do we have a second to defer this to action to January?
Second.
Can we have a vote, please? All in favor of moving it to January for action? Say aye.
Can you just, I noticed that we have 25 things that are site restoration. What does that mean?
Once you rip up someone's yard, you gotta go fix it.
Gotta go fix the yard where the manhole was dug up.
I wasn't joking.
Why do you have to do that?
Well,
Technically, we don't.
unless you're a fiber
There's
company.
25.
Some of them in the street.
Okay,
But we're not having a lot of work done in it.
No, we're not.
Motion
We
to
take
adjourn?
care of it.
I'm waiting for, make sure we don't cut off any discussion.
No, I just
Oh,
want to
he's
point
just
out that
explaining to
we
me.
don't have much work.
We don't have much
Take
work
care,
to be done.
take care of our lines, and that's it.
So,
No, not as old.
We don't
maybe
need all
two.
this maintenance stuff.
Okay, with that, I propose we adjourn, and I wish everyone a wonderful Christmas and holiday season. I look forward to seeing everybody in 2025.
great.